Are the Oklahoma Sooners going to make a splash in their coaching search?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. The Oklahoma Sooners are still in search of a defensive coordinator, somebody to take the reins from Zach Alley and call the defense for the Oklahoma Sooners. There's been some noise, some buzz out there that the Sooners are looking to make a splash and hire Jim Knowles, the former Oklahoma State, currently Ohio State defensive coordinator, who's got the Buckeyes playing in the national championship game. And listen, Sooner Scoop did a deep dive on Jim Knowles. Colin Kennedy of Sooners Illustrated and 247 Sports recently wrote a piece over there just about Oklahoma's coaching transitions and developments and things like that. And according to him, the Knowles thing, there might be a little bit of something there. There might be some interest mutually there. We know that Jim Knowles has some ties to the Oklahoma area, considering he was at Oklahoma State for a time. But given that Knowles and the Buckeyes are getting ready for Notre Dame and trying to go win a national title, it's unlikely we'll hear anything definitive about if that's a real thing until after the national title game. What's interesting here, and Colin Kennedy points it out in his Sooners Illustrated piece, that it would be a unique situation because, one, if Jim Knowles did come to Oklahoma, that's a big if, a big if that were to happen, he's likely to not have or not really get an opportunity to bring much of his staff with him. Oklahoma's got a staff in place defensively. Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, Brandon Hall, Jay Valai. There could be some transitions, some changes that are made on the defensive staff if you were to hire Jim Knowles, but Brent Venables is not getting rid of Todd Bates. He's not getting rid of Miguel Chavis, and he's certainly not getting rid of Brandon Hall. You could make a case and make an argument that maybe Jay Valai could find opportunities elsewhere, or that they would want to make a move at cornerbacks coach. Ohio State, it's done some good stuff at corner. Most recently with Jim Knowles. Also, Oklahoma State had some really good cover guys as well during his time there. You could make an argument that that is a place where you might see a transition take place. Also could bring a linebackers coach because Oklahoma currently doesn't have a linebackers coach. Now, there's a lot of talk about a guy like James Skalski getting promoted from analyst to linebackers coach. That would make a lot of sense. Coached under Brent Venables or played under Brent Venables as well. But the unique thing here would be, okay, if you're bringing a Jim Knowles in, Jim Knowles is running your defense. And does he come in with his defense and change things? Change the defensive culture, the defensive mindset, the defensive philosophy, and completely transition away from Brent Venables' defense. That's the thing that's interesting here, because you often don't see a defensive-minded head coach or even an offensive-minded head coach hand the reins to somebody that's going to run something different than what they would like to run. I'm not saying it would be a bad thing. Obviously, Jim Knowles is a great defensive coordinator, and it would make a lot of sense and allow Brent Venables to fully take his hands off the defense and focus on the big picture stuff. I've argued that, hey, let Brent Venables go be the defensive coordinator, call the defense, be fully hands-on, not just in the game planning and game adjustments aspect of the defense, but that's where he's made his money. That's where he's made his career, is as a defensive coordinator. So in a make or break year, why not let Brent Venables go be the defensive play caller? The other side of that is if you bring in a guy with Jim Knowles' credibility, Jim Knowles' success, Jim Knowles' ability to run a defense, Brent Venables can fully take his hands off of it and focus on being the CEO of the team. He can focus on making sure that the game operations are spot on, that we're not running into timing issues and delay of game issues and when to use timeout issues, game management issues. Brent Venables can fully focus on every single aspect of the team. He doesn't have to look over Jim Knowles' shoulder and wonder if he's going to be able to call a good defense. We've got several years of examples of Jim Knowles being one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. It would make a lot of sense. Will it happen? Man, I don't know. It seems like a stretch. You see big time defensive coordinators make these kind of moves. Offensive coordinators make big moves from power program to power program. I mean, Alex Grinch, right? He was at Ohio State and moved to Oklahoma. You see it from time to time. I mean, there's talk right now of the Penn State offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator making moves. The Penn State defensive coordinator going to Clemson. So this stuff happens all the time in coaching circles. It's just weird because the dude is currently coaching for a national title and in a really good situation at Ohio State where he has full control of everything on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see. Again, it kind of blows me away that this is even a possibility that's being floated out there. I don't know if it'll happen, but I do know that the buzz feels real. I mean, you have places like Sooners Illustrated, Sooner Scoop that are addressing it, and they wouldn't be addressing it if there wasn't some smoke. We'll see what happens. We got a national title game to play, and all the focus for Jim Knowles, for the Buckeyes, are going to be on getting ready for Notre Dame and trying to slow down Riley Leonard and that Notre Dame rushing attack. Another part of Colin Kennedy's piece over at Sooners Illustrated 247 Sports, I highly recommend you go check that out, is on DeMarco Murray. Now, the Dallas Cowboys are in the midst of a coaching transition as they decided to not rehire or extend Mike McCarthy and are letting him go into coaching free agency, basically. What that means is, according to Colin Kennedy, who cites sources, that DeMarco Murray might be in line for a role with the Dallas Cowboys. He said maybe running backs coach, maybe some other kind of role with the organization. Who knows? It could be in a scouting role. It could be in a front office role for DeMarco Murray. Who knows? We know that he's got significant ties to the organization, having played there through his rookie contract and had a huge season leading the lead in rushing back in 2014. So would not surprise me to see DeMarco Murray reunite with the Cowboys and become a coach with them. There's talk that maybe Jason Witten is going to be a name to watch in their head coaching search. A guy like Kellen Moore, who's again tied to DeMarco Murray, could be the head coach after his time with the Philadelphia Eagles potentially is done as the offensive coordinator. You're seeing buzz about a guy like Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders, who knows where that would go. But if DeMarco Murray does leave Oklahoma, it looks like that could be a potential landing spot, according to Colin Kennedy's sources, again, over at Sooners Illustrated. If Oklahoma does lose DeMarco Murray to the NFL, again, it's not that big of a stretch. He, I think, is a good running backs coach, has a lot of familiarity with the NFL game, and somebody who would probably do well managing running back rotations at the NFL level, where you kind of have to manage running back rotations. Otherwise, guys get worn out too early, too often. It'll just be fascinating to see if that's a direction that they go. What would Ben Arbuckle do to replace Murray on the coaching staff? I'm sure he's got guys that he would love to bring with him if a assistant position opened. So we'll see where that goes. Otherwise, that's kind of really it. No other big coaching changes on the horizon for the Sooners. Seems like everybody's kind of locked in. Otherwise, we'll see if some transitions take place over the next few weeks. We've got a Sooners depth chart projection from Sooner Scoop. Going to give my thoughts on it, where I might agree, disagree, and we'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. We always find that decluttering and refreshing our space helps us get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look, start the year with Wayfair. Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. We're currently looking for a couch because our kids have just worn ours out, and their huge selection makes it easy to find the pieces that fit our style and budget. Our favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and we found everything we needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or your budget, and Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home, wayfair.com. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay is traveling for work this week, so you're going to get a lot of John flying solo on the show this week. But thanks again for tuning in and making us your first listen every single day. Depth chart projection from George Soya over at Sooner Scoop does great work covering the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's just go through some of this on the offensive side of the ball. He does a little too deep. John Mateer at quarterback, Michael Hawkins, the backup. No real surprise there. I think everybody's expecting this to be John Mateer's job because, hey, you're not going to give the dude a big NIL deal, bring him in from Washington State with his offensive coordinator and not have him be the starter. So it just makes sense. Michael Hawkins going to get some significant run. Hopefully the Oklahoma Sooners offense is good enough that Hawkins gets quite a few snaps in the offense for the Oklahoma Sooners that, hey, we're up big in games and we can get him some more experience. At running back, I find this to be interesting. Javante Barnes, Xavier Robinson. Listen, the Oklahoma Sooners are bringing back everybody at running back. So it's not surprising that the two best guys from the 2024 season are leading the way on the running back depth chart. Javante Barnes got banged up towards the end of the year. Would have loved to have him for Alabama and LSU. I think he makes a difference in those games. But Xavier Robinson ran well. When you gave him the rock in a heavy workload against Alabama, he did a great job. Now, the Oklahoma Sooners run game couldn't get anything going against LSU, but I think that was just a really good game plan by the Tigers to minimize and limit what Oklahoma was trying to do offensively. So not surprising to see those two at the top of the depth chart, but don't sleep on Gavin Sawchuk. Don't sleep on Taylor Tatum. Don't sleep on Torrey Blaylock. I think each of those guys could make an impact for the Sooners. Tight end. This is going to be a fascinating one because Oklahoma brought in 3 guys through the transfer portal as veteran options, but George is projecting Devon Mitchell and Cade McIntyre. I love this, man. I love the idea of seeing your 2 young guys leading the way at the position. It's time. Like Devon Mitchell, I know this will be kind of your first swim through college football. You've not played college football before. I would love to see him emerge and become the dude that everybody thinks he can be. So much of it seems to have been just getting used to life at the collegiate level, which is a difficult transition. And when you were supposed to be a high school senior and you're making that transition to the college football level, you've got a lot to learn, not just the X's and O's, but just learning life. And so I'm intrigued to see where Devon Mitchell ends up after spring ball, after fall camp. Cade McIntyre, the dude is an uber athlete. He's a really good athlete. His issue has just been size and figuring it out in the run game. But I think if those are your 2 tight ends, I think you have a much more dynamic position than what you've had each of the last 2 years. So excited for that potential. Wide receiver, he's starting Dion Burks, Jaden Gibson, and Giovanni Gibson. Love the trio there. If Jaden Gibson is healthy, I expect him to be one of your starters. The biggest question is going to be, what's his timetable look like? Is he going to be full go for fall camp? Because if he's not full go for fall camp, I would be shocked to see him start the season as a starter. If he's limited, if he's, not fully up to speed by the time the season starts, then you're probably going to see a Keontez Lewis out there on the outside. You might see an Ivan Carrion, somebody like that. You could see a Josiah Martin. Sorry, I was about to say Josiah Wagner, but it's Josiah Martin out there on the outside. It's going to be fascinating to see what his timetable, because we've seen these ACLs, these knee injuries, take a little bit longer than a year for some of these guys in recent years. Jaden Gibson, a lot of his game is predicated on his explosiveness, the ability to get up above the rim, make plays above the defender. And if he's not able to do that, that could really hamper his game, but really hoping for a swift recovery. In the 2 deep at wide receiver, Isaiah Satania behind Dion Burks in the slot, Ivan Carrion, Zion Kearney on the outside. Again, I think this is best case scenario, right? You want to see your young guys emerge and become part of your 2 deep. If you're still battling for spots on the 2 deep, then okay, you've still got a lot of work to do. That doesn't mean we're writing you off at all. It just means that you're not quite where you need to be just yet. But Ivan Carrion showed some things in the game against Navy. He was really good, 7 catches, 70 plus yards. And Zion Kearney showed some things as well. Had the big drop, unfortunately, but I think he's got the ability to be a big playmaker. Let's not forget that back in Jaden Gibson's true freshman season, he struggled bad with drops. Even going to the spring game, struggled with some drops, but emerged in 2023 as a big-time threat for the Sooners offense. Let's look at the offensive line real quick. Starting, according to George, Logan Howland, Jacob Sexton, Troy Everett, Eddie Pierre-Louis, and Derek Simmons. In the 2 deep, Michael Fasusi at left tackle, Heath Ozida at left guard, Josh Isosa at center, Febechi Wewu at right guard, and Luke Baklenko at right tackle, backing up Derek Simmons. So interesting here because, man, I think if Eddie Pierre-Louis is able to emerge and become a starter, that really improves your offensive line from a physicality standpoint. It'll be fascinating to see if that's where Bill Bedenbaugh goes, or if he decides to ride the experience of a guy like Febechi Wewu. Jacob Sexton, the only issue with Jacob Sexton is just health. If my guy can stay healthy, then he's going to have a chance to be a starter for this team. But let's not sleep on Heath Ozida, because Heath Ozida played well as he grew into the position at left guard. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Jacob Sexton's got this 100% on lockdown. I think there's potential that Heath Ozida could earn that role. And then, the Logan Howland, Michael Fasusi spot at left tackle. Logan Howland, he's going to have to prove that he can hold on to the position. And then, but I also think that a Luke Baklenko could end up starting at one of the tackle spots, or Derek Simmons. But I think if your right tackle spot is Derek Simmons, Luke Baklenko, I like what you got there on that right tackle position. So, I don't disagree a whole lot with much of this. I think you could see some of the young guys emerge and begin to take roles. You could see an Eddie Pierre-Louis be a starter for the Sooners this year. But at the same time, I think they're going to probably try to lean heavily on some of the veterans and hope that they can develop and be better than what OU had last year. George does say here, the only thing I feel confident in saying is that Dion Burks and Troy Everett will start for OU. Everywhere else, his guess is as good as ours. So, I mean, listen, I think John Mateer is going to start. That is not a question to me. And I do think that, Javante Gibson is probably going to be one of your starters at wide receiver. And then they really like what they got out of Logan Howland. Now, will he start? We'll see. There's a long time between now and September. I want to go into the defensive side of the ball here in the next segment, as well as talk about where Oklahoma lands in some of these SEC power rankings. But we'll do that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that's happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. for me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms, so hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. All right, going through George Stoya's depth chart projection from Sooner Scoop. We talked about the offensive side in the second segment. Let's dig into the defensive side here. And this is going to be one that's a lot easier to project, that George admits. R. Mason Thomas, Grayson Halton, Jaden Jackson, Marvin Jones are your starting defensive line. I think you could go either way. You could probably say Dominic Williams or Grayson Halton, or Dominic Williams or Jaden Jackson. I think two of those three are going to be your starters: Grayson Halton, Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams. What happens game one, snap one? That's going to be a question, but I think you could consider those three guys your starting interior defensive linemen. How they parse those starts out, those snaps out, that's still going to be a question. I do believe that David Stone is going to be seeing a huge uptick in snaps. I expect him to develop this offseason significantly and take on a more significant role in the Oklahoma Sooners defensive line rotation. At defensive end, I expect the same thing out of PJ Adebawore. This is the time, man. Got to stay healthy this offseason. Got to continue to develop. Got to start seeing that R. Mason Thomas trajectory, right? Okay, year 1 and 2, you didn't really play a whole lot because you had a hard time staying healthy. Year 3, you're in year 3 now. Now's the time to make the jump. Opposite of those guys, Marvin Jones Jr. and George is projecting a Taylor Wine. Now, that's a dude that I think could play an Ethan Downs type role. A dude that's really good at setting the edge. He's strong. He's long. He's physical. But that Marvin Jones Jr. piece is going to be the one that makes them the biggest difference. If he can come in and add another legit pass rushing threat to the Oklahoma Sooners defensive line, that's going to make them so much better. We've seen it all year long. I've harped on this offseason. South Carolina, Ohio State, you're seeing it right now. When you have the ability to rush two guys off the edge and win with just rushing 4, man, that makes your defense so much more dynamic. We saw the difference. Okay. Go back to the end of the Texas Arizona State game where they rushed 7, I believe, versus the end of the Ohio State Texas game where they just rushed 4, and Ohio State was able to get pressure with 4. Arizona State wasn't able to get pressure with the blitz, and they got beat. Whereas Ohio State was able to drop guys back into coverage and make Quinn Ewers think about it, and really did not have enough time at all because they rushed 4 and they were able to win with 4. We've seen R. Mason Thomas be able to win the same way Jack Sawyer did, right? Under 3 seconds, being able to get to the quarterback and affect the quarterback. If Oklahoma is able to get that out of Marvin Jones Jr. and R. Mason Thomas, man, that just takes their defense to another level for 2025. At linebacker, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis. And if we're going to consider the Cheetah, Kendall Dolby, no real surprise here. If Kendall Dolby's healthy, he's going to be your starter at Cheetah. And then George is projecting that Samuel Omasigo moves more to a traditional linebacker spot, playing the weak side behind Kip Lewis. Now that Lewis Carter is off to UCF, you can slide Samuel Omasigo over there as opposed to playing the Cheetah. Where, listen, I think he did a solid job at Cheetah, but I think he fits better as a more traditional linebacker where you're not going to ask him to cover slot wide receivers. Kendall Dolby and Reggie Powers III. I think that gives you a pretty dynamic Cheetah duo. And then he's projecting Kendall Daniels behind Kobe McKenzie at linebacker. And again, we've seen Brent Venables and his staff want to play a lot of linebackers and a lot of combinations. And so I think Kendall Daniels is going to get a lot of run. You could even see him as a stand-up edge because he did play that in a dynamic way for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. You could see him playing some Cheetah as well. So he'll rotate at several positions, but George has him at linebacker currently. Cornerback Eli Bowen and Jacoby Johnson. He's projecting to be the starters with Gentry Williams and Devon Jordan. This will be determined by if Oklahoma decides to go and get another cornerback through the transfer portal. But to me, that's fair. You start with Eli Bowen, you start with Jacoby Johnson, because those are the guys that finish the season starting for you. If Gentry Williams is healthy, I think he usurps one of those guys because he's just very, very talented. The only issue has been staying healthy. Gentry Williams has all the ability to be a dynamic player in the Oklahoma Sooners defense. And then at safety, you got Robert Spears-Jennings and Peyton Bowen starting with Michael Boganowski and Jaden Hardy as the backups. And to me, that all seems right. As you continue to get your safety room developed, you'll probably see Michael Boganowski take over for Robert Spears-Jennings after 2025. And then you'll see a rotation between Peyton Bowen and Jaden Hardy in 2026 as well. But I think that safety room is dynamic. The defense to me looks really good. You lose Danny Stutzman, you lose Billy Bowman, you lose Ethan Downs. All of that hurts. But I still really, really like the talent that Oklahoma's got on defense and the ability to be dynamic for the Sooners. Real quick, just going to touch on SEC Mike's power rankings. And it's got the Oklahoma Sooners coming in at number 14 in his power rankings, which I'm not surprised. You know, Oklahoma had a really poor season and only have themselves to blame for where they're going to be going into the next season. But, you know, it's a team that I think has a lot to prove and can be everything that we expect them to be. We've talked about it on a number of occasions that if the Sooners are better offensively, then they can be better than where SEC Mike is projecting them to be, number 14 in the SEC. Finishing the season, that's probably right where they need to be. But right now in his power rankings 1.0, he's got Georgia number 1, Texas number 2, LSU number 3, Alabama 4, Ole Miss 5, South Carolina 6, Florida 7, Tennessee 8, Auburn 9, Texas A&M 10, Vandy 11, 12, Missouri, Arkansas, then Oklahoma. The only two teams behind him are Kentucky and Mississippi State. The only teams maybe I have an issue with here are Tennessee behind Florida. I like what Florida's got going on with DJ Lagway, but Tennessee was a playoff team, and they're bringing back Nico. Did they lose some things in the portal? Yeah, but I expect them to still be really, really good. Also, Auburn above Texas A&M and Vandy and Missouri. I get that they added my guy Jackson Arnold, but my dude needs to go and prove it. He needs to prove that he's a guy that's able to go and lead an SEC team. But Oklahoma coming in at 14 with SEC Mike. Hey, what are we going to be saying all offseason, right? Got to prove it. I can talk about the talent that they've got. I can talk about the depth that they've got on defense, but it's going to be up to John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, and that offense. If it's a good offense, I mean, they've got the potential to win 9 or 10 games. If it's a lot like what we saw this year, then we might be looking at another 6-6 season in the regular season. My gut tells me it's not going to be like it was this year. But how big of a jump can they make? That's going to be the question that's on everybody's mind for 2025. Can your offensive line be better? Can the wide receivers that you brought in, can they make the jump? Can a Javante Gibson make the jump from the FCS to playing SEC football? Does he got that ability in him? Can they find a tight end that provides a dynamic element to the passing game and can hold up as a blocker? Can the running back room get going early? Can the offensive line get going early? Can we have some stability week 1 to week 13, 14 of the season where we're not churning through offensive line combinations throughout the year? Those are going to be the questions that are on everybody's mind all offseason. And we will continue to discuss them here on Locked On Sooners. So thank you so much for being a part of the show, subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams and the show at Locked On Sooners on all your social media platforms. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports and go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, as well. We're going to continue to talk Oklahoma Sooners offseason as we get ready for winter workouts and spring ball. We'll have testing numbers come out, and we'll see more offers going out as the Sooners try to start getting those 2026 targets really lined out and figuring out their recruiting board. But until next time, I'm John Williams. Talk to you then. For Jay Smith, Boomer Sooner.